We're Bloody, it's your girl, Pony, and today I have absolutely no idea what is happening. So that may sound a bit negative, but I don't really mean it that way. I enjoyed these issues, it's just that there is a lot to talk about regarding them, and being a mystery, I of course still have plenty of questions. I will spill all of the killer details, but before we really talk about what this means, we should probably give a quick summary of what happens. We'll start by discussing issue 2, and then move on to the Halloween special. The second issue is all about Cleo, and we find our dynastic diva preparing for fear-leading claw auditions. She mentions that this semester she won't have to worry about the other ghouls crying nepotism due to Nephra now being graduated. Put a pin in that, we'll come back to it later. Cleo is convinced that becoming the star of the squad will help her win back Deuce, who she broke up with sometime prior. A little bit prior to this, we get a hint at the mystery that's lurking around school corners, with Frankie's father mumbling to himself about missing students and telling his daughter not to be outside after sunrise. This overarching plot is hinted at again later in Cleo's plotline. As it turns out, Cleo's breakup with Deuce has to do with her being convinced, due to intel from Mealy and Persephone, that Claudine is interested in Deuce. The Werecat twins are none too happy with the werewolf or her now ex-school friend, Torlai, as they claim that once the two began dating, Torlai had no time for them anymore. This mutual annoyance has led Cleo, Mealy, and Persephone into a new boo crew of their own. Despite Cleo's new crowd and her attempts to climb back to the top of the social pyramid, she doesn't seem to be headed down a path of success. Deuce seems uninterested in her attempts to woo him, unhappy with the monsters she's surrounded herself with. And while the Queen of Denial fights to keep the Werecat's good graces and land a spot on the Fear Squad, she unintentionally leaves Ghoulia behind. This gives our mysterious figures from issue 1 the perfect chance to keep an eye on the zombie, and something tells me they're up to no good. We end the issue with our main ghouls all together again on the Fear team, although this doesn't eliminate the lingering tension between their fractured friend group. Still, maybe this will give them a chance to unravel their issues and the mystery in the upcoming issues. We end this story with Cleo having achieved her goal, but feeling lonelier than ever. So, one of the first things I thought about this issue is that it 100% confirms to me that there is no way this takes place within the previously established G1 continuity. Originally, I had thought that these and Once Bitten Twice Dead were supposed to, as that was how Mattel seemed to be marketing them. However, at this point, we have just way too many inconsistencies and indications that key events from movies, diaries, and other media never happened in this continuity. In this issue, there's a couple of key factors that show this. One of these is the previously mentioned detail of Nephra having graduated only last semester. Originally, while reading, I had presumed that this was in reference to Nephra having to return and redo her senior year due to her cheating the first time around. However, due to the fact that Cleo voices this as if she's never been at Monster High without her sister looming over her, and the fact that Nephra is now dating Pharaoh— oh yeah, did I mention? Nephra is now dating Pharaoh. I'm thinking that they've made her slightly closer to Cleo's age, and that this is her first graduation. This isn't the only thing either. In a flashback, we see Cleo's family when she was younger, and two very noticeable details are that A, her mother is there, and B, everyone's already mummified. If these were going based off of Cleo's originally established backstory, these two things could not be true at once, unless it was in the present day. Speaking of Cleo's mother, so far we haven't seen her in the current time, but we also haven't had any references to her not being around, so I'm unsure if she's in the picture. I would think that she would be, considering that this continuity seems to reference Hezekiah's diary, but considering that this isn't following all of the original lore, it's hard to say. It leaves me in a place where, since I'm not sure what they're borrowing, inventing, or scrapping, it's hard for me to make a lot of connections or theories, as I'm unsure what exactly applies to this universe. Additionally, it's been stated now that this series and Once Bitten Twice Dead were actually written at the same time, explaining some of the details that don't line up between them. As such, I'm not honestly sure that this is acting as a sequel to Once Bitten Twice Dead either. Rather, they seem to be separate stories that happen to borrow some of the same plot points. The main thing that doesn't line up between the two is the fact that the comics open with the monster clause being enforced as if this is something new for the school, which, based on other G1 media, it would be. Whereas in Once Bitten Twice Dead, it's established that humans even knowing about monsters is already not allowed. This was extremely confusing for me, but this isn't the Once Bitten Twice video. Yes, I would like to make one at some point, but I won't get into it here. I really don't mind these being essentially an AU. I'd actually say I almost prefer it, if only for the sake of not stressing me out so much. But I do wish Mattel would stop trying to market these pieces of media as the original story when they know that they're not. I'm all for letting different authors play around in the spooky sandbox and take things in different directions, but I think they should make it clearer in the marketing that these do not affect or follow the media that many original fans know. And I want to make it clear that that is not an indictment of the authors. I think that that's like a failure on Mattel's marketing part. Like I mentioned before, it's a bit difficult to really craft any theories at the current point in the story, but I'll throw out a couple of things that I noticed anyway. The first major one to me is that these hooded figures are totally going to end up going after Ghoulia. That right there is foreshadowing, baby! Edit, having read the Halloween issue, I may have been wrong about this, but it's still a possibility. Speaking of foreshadowing, I forgot to mention in the last video, but Bloodgood's earring falling off when she's kidnapped and getting a whole panel just to show it off. Oh yeah, that's gonna be plot relevant. Someone is 100% going to find that, and that's how they're gonna figure out that something is up with her. I also think that Meowlody and Persephone may have been lying to Cleo about Claudine trying to flirt with Deuce, or at the very least, they jump to conclusions. I do not at all believe that Claudine is actually interested in him, and honestly, it's kind of funny to me that Cleo does. I know it's probably just her insecurities and abandonment issues speaking, but Cleo, honey, I don't think she likes men. It's possible M and P really do think that's what happened, but it also wouldn't surprise me if they conjured that story just to put a strain on Toralai's relationship. I will say that I do hope they don't keep using relationship-ending drama as a major plot point throughout the entire series. So far, we're averaging about a breakup per issue, which just seems a tiny bit excessive to me. Especially when a very large part of the target audience is old fans who are never happy to see couples that they have cared about for years thrown to the side. Part of this is just personal preference because I honestly would much rather see couples be allowed to be together and find ways to work through whatever problems are surrounding them as a pair, rather than this constant will they, won't they, which I find really tedious. But some of the upcoming issue descriptions make me think this type of drama is probably going to be a mainstay of the series. Complete personal side, if they break up Heath and Abby, I'm going to be very upset. That being said, I do have a feeling that for all the shenanigans, by the end of the series, most of the main Monster High couples will probably be back together. I also think that the World's Scare Science Exhibition is going to be plot relevant later on. The framing of this panel seems very intentional to me, and the notes for the exhibition are what our villain held over Dr. Stein's head to get his cooperation. Besides, so far they seem to be mostly targeting scientists and/or creatures of science. Maybe they're gonna have Dr. Stein unveil whatever their plan is on the world stage. I am curious to know how the currently missing students tie into this. They aren't characters we know anything about, so I can't detect any pattern there. And now for the section in which I point out details that I noticed and/or liked. Firstly, this issue is jam-packed with cameos. I'll include a little collage of all the characters we get to see here. One of them is Cupid, which is very fun to see, and although I mentioned before that this can't be the original continuity, I still like to joke that she had enough of Headmaster Grimm and decided to go back to the school that actually has a good principal. I also especially love the way that Bonita and Cyrena are drawn here. They look so gorgeous. I think my favorite, though, is Lothar from the webisode Fierce Crush. This is exactly the type of super obscure background character that nerds like me go nuts over seeing. Caroline, if you are watching this, I really hope we get to see Herbert East at some point. Please. In general, I think the art in this issue is really nice. The expressions, the way that the different characters' faces are drawn, etc. I really enjoy it. Oh, and these mummy horses are like, so rad! Come on! They made Deuce's snakes able to speak in this issue, which is fascinating to me because that's an element that has only ever existed in G3. And I don't say that as a complaint, just an observation. I find it interesting. Speaking of other generations, Monica Decay, of all monsters, gets name dropped here, and the smallest and most inconsequential one. Oh look, here's Abby's locker. And that's about all that I have for this issue, so let's move on to the Halloween special. The general premise of this is that Monster High is holding a Halloween carnival, as Mr. Stein thinks that it's a good way to give the students a little fun amidst all the chaos. Throughout this issue, it is clear to me that the blackmail and the responsibility of being headmaster are weighing heavily on him. This man is not okay. Draculaura, as head of the school board, helped to set up the event and is dying for everything to go perfectly. Things get a bit complicated though, when the crew gets lost in a maze that makes each of them live out their worst fears. That is for Cleo, being invisible, for Frankie, falling apart, for Claudine, people hating her designs, and for Draculaura, disappointing her father. This whole magical object/environment puts the characters into their nightmares thing is actually one of my favorite tropes, so I was excited to see it here. I feel like it's a really great way to get into the characters' minds. My favorite, and by far the most dramatic, was Draculaura's. These panels of her seeing her father again, only for him to be an illusion, and one that she can't live up to the standards of, is the most emotionally dense part of the issue for me. By the end of the issue, the ghouls are all taken out of their maze-induced anxieties, but another, more tangible problem arises. Slow-mo has gone missing. This is what I was talking about earlier when I said that I may have been wrong about my theory that the villains were going after Ghoulia. When reading, I fully thought she was gonna be the one who had been kidnapped until the actual victim was revealed. It's possible they'll still try to go after her, given all that lurking in issue 2, but I'm wondering if they may try to get to her through her boyfriend instead, similarly to how they were using Hezekiah as blackmail towards Nora. Speaking of the couples, it seems to me like this issue is hinting at Deuce and Cleo maybe getting back on better terms, although nothing big happens. Their interactions just feel like that endurance is still there to me, and I'm sure that you all have seen the panels that seem to tease a crush between Manitar and Frankie. This is a really strange part of the issue, as the idea is kind of brought up but doesn't necessarily go anywhere. Now, this is an ongoing series, so it's possible they could continue that thread in upcoming issues, but honestly, I don't see this plotline lasting very long, considering that we know that the next holiday issue will be playing with the idea of Frankie and Johnny as romantic interests. Honestly, I was fully expecting Claudine's assessment of the situation here to be wrong, and the ending to be amoral about how you shouldn't try and push people together. Think kinda like the side plot in Ghoul's Rule. But it seems like they were really trying to hint at something between these two. It's very random to me, like I don't dislike it, it's just kinda there. But I suppose we'll see if it goes anywhere. Seeing all of the costumes in this issue was also really fun. I really enjoyed Claudine wearing her scarily ever after look, Draculaura's beautiful Rococo-inspired outfit, and Claude being a wolf in sheep's clothing. Additionally, I love the lighting in this issue. It's very moody and atmospheric, and we get some really great panels like this because of it. There's also a fun Elvira cameo here, which was a nice surprise to me, even though I later remembered that it shouldn't have been a surprise to me because it was totally mentioned in like one of the first descriptions of the comic that came out. Overall, I'm very interested to see that the holiday issues may actually have big events happening plot-wise, as I was under the impression that since they are considered one-shots, they would be mostly contained. I'm sure the main series will still make sense, even if you don't pick these up, but it's a good thing to keep in mind if you want to be totally in the know. Speaking of the main series, as always, I'm dying for the next one, and luckily we won't have very long to wait. The gap between 1 and 2 felt like forever to me, but from now on we're coasting through with at least one release a month and a couple very close together due to holiday issues. That is, so long as nothing get delayed, but so far nothing has been, so except for the Pride issue. But other than that, we've been good. You may remember that I mentioned last video that they are accepting fan mail to be featured in the back pages. This issue didn't have any and instead featured an interview, as they stated that they wanted to give people more time to submit some, but we should expect to see some in issue 3. And that is about all that I have to say about these issues of the comics. Thank you all so much for continuing to watch these videos, and I hope that you have fun discussing these with me. I do apologize that I have not been very consistent. I've had trouble finding motivation and energy to make these videos, but I am still interested in them and I'm still keeping up with the series, so don't worry. And for one last unrelated aside, I will be including links to Doctors Without Borders and the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund in the description for this video. These are both really wonderful organizations that help provide aid to Gaza and other places around the world that need it. And if you would like to donate or to help their cause, please feel free to check those out. Those will be in my description. With all of that being said, thanks so much for watching. I hope you all will continue with me through the series, and as always, I hope that you have a fantastic day.